What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Game Informer Show, a weekly podcast covering the video game industry. Join us every Thursday for a discussion about the latest gaming news, reviews, and exclusive reveals alongside Game Informer staff and special guests from around the industry, such as Chainsaw Man, who's here today.
It's me, Denji, the Chainsaw Man.
Yes, I'm your host.
You gotta check out the video version to see what we're talking about.
Yeah. I'm one of your hosts, Alex Van Aken, and today I'm joined by Marcus Stewart. How you doing?
Hello, I am officially in charge of this podcast because my hat says it dictates that.
Yeah, the crown. Yeah,
I have a crown on, so
I guess you will be the first in line in the revolution.
Yes, first in line of succession.
No, at the guillotine.
Oh, this is the French Revolution. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Well,
it was a good run. Marcus. It's going to be that Wesley Snipes gif of him holding the gun and crying.
You know what? I'll take that. If it's Wesley Snipes that executes me, I can live with that.
Okay, perfect.
And I guess not really live with it. I'll be dead.
Yeah, you can die with it. With that memory.
Yes.
We are also joined by Kyle Hilliard. How you doing, Kyle?
Oh, I get a double introduction?
You get a double introduction.
So I have to be in character as Denji, and then I'm also
you have a split personality on this episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
Me too.
Happy Halloween, guys.
Happy Halloween.
Well, it's old news now.
Well, at the time we're recording this, it is Halloween, which is why we're dressed to the nines, you could say. But by the time you hear this, it won't be Halloween anymore. But screw it. I mean, Halloween. Is this a hot take to say that Halloween is the most fun holiday? It's the best. It's the best holiday, in fact. And
to me,
it's
up there.
To extend Halloween further, I don't think anyone's going to complain about more Halloween.
Good point.
If people can leave their Christmas trees up till middle of January, then we can have 2 more days of Halloween. Dang it.
I left my Christmas tree up one time till May.
What?
See, that's just smart. That's just.
Wait, was it a real tree or a fake tree?
Fake tree.
I was gonna say, was this tree just falling apart in your living room?
No, it was fake, but it had an ambiance to it,
I mean, do you even take it down at that point? You may as well just go the full distance just to say that you did.
I know. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Thank you for the proclamation, King Marcus. You're right. I agree.
Yes, we are leaving our Christmas trees up a full year this year, and whoever makes it to the end gets knighted.
That's your first decree?
Yes, you become the Christmas knight.
So you're rewarding us for our laziness. Love it. Okay.
There you go.
Is it laziness or dedication?
Both.
Right.
I mean, you have to be dedicated to be lazy. You have to commit to laziness.
Yeah.
Good point. See? That's why you're the king.
And I have to put up with every time somebody comes to my house, they're like, why is your Christmas tree still up? And I say, it's the best time of the year.
I think you just say, mind your own business.
Get out of my house.
That works too, yeah. Well, today we're going to be talking about video games. Shocker. First up, we're going to be talking about Jusant. Marcus has been playing RoboCop, which kind of came out of nowhere, for me at least. A new WarioWare game and the finals. We might also get into a bit of Alan Wake 2 and Mario RPG if we have time. We do have a hard out today, so if it's a shorter episode, that's why. But let's go ahead and dive into Jusant. Marcus and I have been playing it. Marcus, you reviewed it for Game Informer. What is Jusant, and what do you think?
So Jusant is a new game by Don't Nod, who, by the way, they've been pumping games out left and right, it feels like.
Yeah,
this is the second game they've released this year. They did Harmony, The Fall of Reverie earlier this year, and they still have Banishers, which was supposed to come out this year, but now it's coming early next year or something. Mm-hmm. But I feel like out of those three, this almost feels like the most low profile because it's a meditative mountain climbing game, basically, where you play as this silent little guy who's got a cute little pet named Balas who looks like it's made out of water. And the entire premise of the game is that you're in this sort of deserty area and you're trying to climb to the top of a mountain and you don't know why yet, but you just got to do it. And
but you just got to do it.
Sometimes you just got to. So what's neat about this game is the climbing itself. You're literally mountain climbing. You've got a little rope that you use to anchor yourself to the walls, which is pretty much your only real tool.
You got a cool hip gadget that they use to reel in their their rope. You know.
Yeah, it's a retractable rope.
It's a little futuristic a little bit. It looks cool.
I mean, is it? Does that not exist?
That does not exist.
Oh, okay. That seems like that should exist.
As somebody who used to be a part of the rock climbing community, meaning I lived in a town that had a lot of rock climbing. I didn't actually rock climb myself.
You live in Boulder, right?
I lived in Boulder, Colorado, named after boulders like the rock that people climb. Yeah, that is new tech. That is new tech in this game. Maybe our military has that tech and we don't know it yet, you know? But the everyday rock climbers do not have the tech present in Jusant.
Okay, well, we should work on that. But yeah, otherwise, it's a meditative like climbing game. You're trying to get to the top of this mountain. You don't know why, but along the way, as you're climbing up, you're seeing you're coming across settlements because there used to be a society that was embedded into this mountain, and there's no one else around. Like it's been abandoned, and the only evidence that you have left is finding all of these different lore notes that sort of spells what life was like when things were better. I don't want to get too specifics. I think one of the appeals of this game is kind of finding out what happened or how things got to where they were. But you do get a...
Sorry to interrupt. You know what it reminds me of a little bit, Marcus? And less of a mystery than Outer Wilds is. But it does remind me a bit of Outer Wilds in that way. Like kind of looking at the footprints of an old village or an old group of people that you seemingly are a part of, but they're nowhere to be found. Maybe the character knows where they're at. Maybe it's just us that don't know. It's kind of, I haven't finished the game, but I'm very much enjoying like finding those notes, reading about the recurring characters who are talking to each other. There's also like you can pick up seashells and that are like embedded in this mountain, which is some environmental storytelling that tells you, oh, was this covered in water once upon a time? And they kind of like act as reflection points where you can kind of hear what it was like to be in this space when people were there.
Right, like you're putting the conch shells up to your ears like you used to do as a kid to hear like, oh, you hear the ocean, but in this case you're hearing sort of like vestiges of the past of like kids
and that's kind of where the meditation comes into play. Because it's very zen like as a player, like these like nice low rhythmic drones come into play. You're hearing like these like soundscapes sweep by you, a lot of like ambient notes and ambient noises, people chattering, that kind of thing, but all sort of disambiguous or ambiguous rather.
But yeah, the star of the show, like I mentioned, is the climbing. And the thing that I love maybe the most about this game is that the climbing mechanics are so well done.
Yeah.
Where, the idea is that you're steering both hands of the climber independently. Like each of his hands are tied to a corresponding shoulder button, and you're pressing them to sort of grip onto handholds, and then sort of steering with the left stick to sort of like in a rhythmic like left, right, pulling yourself up or shimmying across things. And it's something that sounds like it could either be cumbersome or even tiring on your hands, but it never feels like that. Like it feels like it walks that perfect balance of being more involved than pretty much 90% of climbing in video games, which can be pretty much automatic. You just sort of see a handhold and sometimes just move forward on the stick and the game takes care of it for you. But also it's not going for like super hardcore realism where it's like, I'm trying to think of a game. Like there was that mountain climbing game that was in VR that came out.
The Climb.
Actually, you played it, Kyle, right? Didn't you? Or you played something like it?
A very first one, yeah.
Right.
And I didn't really particularly like that game. Recently, Horizon is a VR game that has a lot of climbing where you're like grabbing and pulling yourself up. And yeah, I mean, I've played very little of this game, but I think I was on the new gameplay today with you, Marcus, and I was like, this kind of reminds me of Team Ico stuff. And you being like, yeah, a little bit. Like that was all I really needed to kind of like sign up. And playing like the first, really truly the first 30 minutes, that was the big thing that I was impressed by. I was like, this climbing does not feel complicated or cumbersome. It's actually engaging and keeps you more involved in it than like say an Uncharted where you're just sort of pushing the control stick, tapping X, and pushing the control stick and tapping X, you know?
Yeah.
So like I really want to keep going with it. I it's not one that was I was aware of it. I thought it looked really pretty, but it has moved up, especially after your review, Marcus, to being like, okay, I gotta put some time aside for Jusant. This seems like really interesting.
Yeah, and because the climbing is like, it strikes that middle ground, like climbing up and hitting like an elevation checkpoint feels like an accomplishment. Like it feels like you have to work, especially because along the way you can stake pitons. I don't know how you say the word, but they're basically stakes. Right. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, pitons.
You have 3 of them at your disposal, and the purpose is that they basically extend your reach with the rope, and they also provide you basically a makeshift checkpoint, because you can't die in this game because you're always anchored by a rope. Even if you fall, like you'll never fall to your death, which is good because the game's going for sort of like a more relaxed, meditative vibe. But there's still
kind
that
of like
element
exploratory spirit too.
Yeah, but it still has like enough element of failure where if you're not mindful of how many pitons you're putting down, if you slip and fall, you will just swing right back to where you started, and you got to do that whole climbing section again, and you go like, oh, I should have added a second one. Why didn't I? So I like that because it kind of gives you, or not even kind of, it gives you creative freedom to sort of figure out your way past tricky points where like, oh, there's a section here that doesn't have any handholds, like it's just like a smooth wall. So that's what can I do there? Or how can I, like maybe I'll put a piton here and then I'll, lower on the rope and do like a wall run to cross this gap. Maybe you need the pitons there too to do a sort of like a double jump to reach something that might be a little high to give you like an extra boost, or like things like that. And then you also have your little water buddy. His name is Blast. It's sort of this magical creature basically. And when you use its power, you hit like a button and it emits like this pulse, and it affects organic elements in the environment, and it sort of transforms them into sort of like basically things to help you climb. So like if you use it near like a big flower bud, it'll make these sort of like grabbable buds pop up on the wall, and you can climb those. There are like these big vines that will appear, and then you'll see like a little vine, and then you can make it grow and stretch up a wall, and then you can grab it and just ride up the wall with it too if you want. There's some other cool tricks I'm gonna get into later on in the game that you can use Blast for. So it's like a combination of like real climbing with a little bit of like fantastical elements to it. Mm-hmm. And I think that balance is really nice, especially when it can start getting more interesting in the later stages, where you're sort of combining them to be like, okay, what can I use here? Like, how many pitons can I put to reach this like weird gap or whatever, while also using blast powers to maybe reach a flower so I can, reach some other area. What I also like too is that there's multiple paths. You're always going up. Like you always know, like, okay, like the main path is probably up somehow, but you're also going inside the mountain too. So like there's multiple like temples and like different corridors inside the mountains that can kind of get pretty elaborate, like especially towards the end where you're like, oh, there's multiple paths here where, not all of them are critical paths, but they'll take you to like collectibles and stuff. Or sometimes you have to solve something there that will open up something, on the critical path, like a door or whatever. So it encourages exploring, which I was doing anyway, because just the world looks gorgeous. I think the art direction in this game is incredible. It looks absolutely beautiful, and just also super detailed. Some of the ruins of the civilization. But also like, it's just cool to get those sort of environmental stories of like exploring for a bit, finding some weird room. And you see like, oh, this is like a stable, almost like for animals. Like, I don't know if they have horses in this world, but it looks like something like that. And you might miss it if you didn't poke around a bit. And it just sort of helps you fill in your headcanon for how this society operated. And then there's also like actual collectibles, like you mentioned, the seashells. There are these cool wall paintings that you can find that sort of tell the legend of the backstory of this world, which I went out of my way to grab as much as I can. And what's nice is that the game tracks everything. So, because when you beat the game, you can go back and replay chapters, and it'll tell you straight up like, hey, you missed this, or you have everything here, so you can just pick and choose the ones that you're missing stuff from, which I recommend doing, because I think it's, like I said, to get that vital background, but also I think the writing and the lore diaries is really good. Like there's one particular set of notes from this girl Bianca, who you find her first note at the beginning of the game, where she's presumably younger, and she's like working in this lighthouse, and she's talking about like something like some sort of disaster it's coming, and she's like, well, I want to go to the top of the mountain, but I'm not supposed to. Like, I'm supposed to be down here at the lighthouse and watch it, but like I've been here my whole life. And she's basically just a young girl like itching to go see the world. So she's like, screw it, I'm gonna join this expedition, gonna go to the top. And you're kind of getting updates on her story as you go higher and higher, and seeing all the twists and turns. But you have to go out of your way to find these notes, and they're not. I don't think they're particularly hard to find in most cases. Like some of them, if you do any reasonable amount of poking around, you'll find most of them.
Yeah.
Which is nice too. Like they want you to at least see most of it because it does give you that background. Because again, the character doesn't talk. You don't know your explicit mission for being there until like it doesn't start to become clear until pretty much the end what you're trying to do. But I like that sort of like, like that. I would say indirect storytelling, but it's just not blatant. Like it's not telling you like, hey, there's not a narrator, or it's not telling you like this is what you got to do. It's like just poke around, you'll figure it out, and it's not like some super complicated thing either. But I think that like,
but there is a narrative, right? Like I mean, like, am I gonna get a story conclusion by finishing the game that I'm satisfied with? Okay, good.
Yeah, I like the ending. Like I think the ending, yeah, like I don't think if you're looking for like explicit answers for what happened, I don't think the game is interested in doing that. Like it does give you enough context to kind of be like, I think I have an idea of what happened here, or at least why it happened. But yeah, again, if you're looking for like, here's all the answers to everything ever, it's not that kind of game, and it doesn't need to be.
I certainly don't want that. I'm just curious if it's like, are we talking like Journey, Cocoon, like draw your own conclusions, like about everything? Or
yeah,
like,
I think it's a step
the fact that there's a
that.
character with a name makes me think that there's like, okay, there's a little bit more here, which is cool. I'm in there.
I mean, yeah, it's a bit, it's not as open-ended. It's probably more in like the limbo inside camp of like giving you just enough to sort of like, I think I have a handle on what's happening here. But
okay, it's big too. But yeah, I know what you mean.
But yeah, between like that, the air of mystery this game has is amazing. And again, I think the climbing and the traversal is so much fun. Like I was so excited every time I got to like a new elevation checkpoint, and you just kind of look down and you go like, man, I just climbed all of that, because you can see everything. You can see the entire path below, and it's almost like intimidating. But then you're like, man, I did have that. And then you look up and see all the weird little hoops you got to jump through, and you're like, all right, let's do it. Like it was never like a bummer. It's again, a lot of games when you have a lot of climbing and platforming, you can kind of hit that next stretch and you're just like, okay, here we go. And it's a chore, and not even because the platforming is tedious. Sometimes it's just kind of mind-numbingly easy. So you're just sort of like doing it, and you're like, all right, let me just hold up and just get across this thing so I can get to the next cool part. But here it's like, because all the climbing almost feels like a puzzle in itself of like, okay, well, how much rope do I need to like, to swing across this gap, or how many pitons did I put here? And then, oh, I'm climbing, but I see another like door across here. Should I go over there instead? There might be something hidden over there, so maybe I'll just go that way. It's just such a more engaging sort of climbing system. And honestly, I there's a part of me that wants to say that it's probably maybe the best climbing I've ever experienced in a video game. Again, for it to not be overly hardcore and trying to like simulate mountain climbing 1-to-1, but also being several steps above what most video game climbing is, I think it hits a sweet spot that I have not seen in games like this. And combined with the story and just the world building and the presentation, it is such a pleasant surprise. Because again, I don't know if this game was on anyone's radar. It looked cool when they first showed it at like an Xbox showcase a few months ago, like around the summer. But yeah, man, this game came out of left field, like of something like this looks like it'd be cool. But even then I was blown away by how much I liked it.
We were talking at my Halloween party this weekend. I believe it was Kyle. Were you explaining to one of our friends that it's similar? It reminds you a bit of Shadow of the Colossus. That you said that?
Yeah, we're talking about Ana Diaz over at Polygon, and I mean, and this is based on like reading Marcus's review and my limited time with it, but like it lacks the the intensity of Shadow of the Colossus, which is sort of like, it is designed to be an intense, thrilling game despite being sort of quiet and contemplative. And Jusant, to me, from what I played and what I read from Marcus writing about it, was like, feels like they took the sort of contemplative part of Shadow of the Colossus and managed to make that the whole game in a weird way, or like,
and also like I think
parts
those
of
mechanics.
Last Guardian where you're climbing around without much anything scary really happening in the moment. Like maybe that's too high praise, because like that to me is like, I'm talking about like apex of video game design kind of stuff, because I love Team Ico so much.
I think
yeah.
I think I think maybe the biggest achievement is just nailing that perfect balance of like meditative, relaxed vibe, but also challenge. Where like this is not like a cakewalk game where you just turn your brain off and move. It's like there's just enough challenge, because you also have to manage your stamina when you're climbing. Of like, oh, I'm gripping too long, I need to move.
And it definitely like ramps up as well. Like I'm probably 3 or 4 hours in, and there are moments now where I'm like, oh, I totally played that wrong, and I've got to redo it.
And it's very easy to adjust too. Like even if you make like a big mistake, you're like, okay, I'm gonna fall down a little bit, maybe not put this baton in this spot, and then climb over here, put it in a better spot. Like they make it. Again, it feels like, I don't even know how to articulate it. It's like they almost account for everything, of like making it just challenging enough to where you do need to think and be on your game, but it's not gonna. You're not gonna be like ripping your hair out, being like, I don't know how to get past this. You know.
Yeah. I started it on Steam Deck and it was running just fine. Like it was running really well on Steam Deck. But I think even though I love playing a game handheld. I love handheld games. I love my Steam Deck. This one I kind of want to throw up on a bigger TV.
I think it looks great. Yeah.
To like Xbox or something.
I really love the art direction, and
animation looks great too.
Yeah, absolutely. This game is for sure in my top 10 this year, like towards the upper end.
Impressive.
I really love this game. It just grabbed me. It's interesting. It's unlike the other, notable releases this year. And it just, I think because of its focus and its niche, it just cuts through the noise a bit for me, in a way that even like some of the best games this year haven't, because it's like, oh, okay, it's another massive AAA game I need to jump into. Like Jusant's like, it's tight, and it's really good at what it does, and
it doesn't overstay its welcome either.
No,
it's about like 6-7 hours.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. I need to. Hell yeah.
Like after tonight, after this podcast, I really want to play Jusant. But Marcus, you've also been playing RoboCop, right? Did you review that for us, or are you doing
I am reviewing it.
Okay.
Yeah. At the time of recording, no review embargo left, but just because of like when code came in and being busy, I haven't finished it yet. But I am planning to write a review for this game.
Yeah. I think it's worth saying, full disclosure too. At least this was my perspective. I was like, I don't know, man. RoboCop, like, do we need to review that? I don't know. Was that your sort of assignment, Marcus? I don't know.
Oh yeah, like I mean, that was the moment they showed that first trailer, right? Probably have the same like reaction of like, oh, they're trying again. They're doing another RoboCop game.
I'm always open-minded, but there's always that kind of thing of like, well, we'll see on that one.
Yeah, you're like, sure, but I mean, it's not like RoboCop has some stellar history in video games where I have a reason to get excited. You're just like, all right, well, let's see, maybe this will land in the average range. I don't know, but that Steam Next Fest demo happened, and that sort of was like the turning point for a lot of people, where people played that and were like, hold on a second, there might be something here. I kind of like this.
This robot policeman might have something to say.
And I was one of them. I played that demo too, and I was like, okay, I see there's potential here. And I'm probably at least halfway through the game at this point, pretty deep. And the game has its problems, and it's definitely it definitely feels like the definition of like a mid-tier game, like a AA game. Yeah. But like, at the same time, it's fun. It's hard. It's like, it's as simple as that. Like, it is an entertaining sort of like relatively basic shooter, like first-person shooter, that does its job of making you feel like RoboCop. So
all right.
So the idea of the game, I believe narratively, I have to double check, but I believe it's set between RoboCop 2 and 3. It's definitely before 3 because Ann Lewis is in this game, who is his partner.
I've never seen any of those movies.
Oh gosh, come on. Kyle, RoboCop fan? Yes, no?
The first one I've seen and enjoyed, but it's not. I was like late to it. It's not some people it kind of defines their personality.
You know,
but
I want to meet those people that are into RoboCop.
his name is Joe Juba, former Game Informer editor.
Oh, is it Columbo and RoboCop, or is this two like cop
Checks.
figures?
You know,
Blank
Joe
Check
actually
podcast.
thinks RoboCop is Columbo. Actually, he got confused. Yeah.
And then Blank Check Podcast's Griffin Newman, I know, is a big outspoken RoboCop fan as well. But
I mean, the first movie, classic of the 80s.
Yeah, of course.
People love the first. I love the first movie. RoboCop 2, solid, good sequel. RoboCop 3, we don't talk about. That's how it works. And so yeah, like I think it's set between those two movies, 2 and 3. You got Ann Lewis there, who is RoboCop's sort of like, you know, sidekick partner. You got Reed there, and you know, I will say that the performances are fine, but in a way, being fine is good because of how, like, RoboCop and a lot of, like I feel like a lot of games miss the point of that first movie, where a lot of games are just straight up action movies and they take themselves very seriously. Of like, oh, you're RoboCop, you're mowing down these criminals and, you know, crappy future Detroit. But they forget that that movie is like satire too. Like it has like a sense of humor and sort of like it's almost like a parody of not only just like post-apocalyptic media, but also like the police force and like, you know, future tech too. Like if
capitalism, you know?
It's like
what's that?
It's the hellscape we currently live in, Alex.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, we're not too far from the
I'm not very
OCP
aware. Sorry.
Yeah, and so like a lot of that just sort of sails over a lot of the game's heads, and this game channels that better than probably most of them. And it doesn't always get all the way there to RoboCop, but at least when it misses, you can tell they tried. Like there's a sense of humor and like either a dark humor or even just like straight up just weird, odd things that are hilarious because they put RoboCop in just these weird situations that you can't help but laugh at, and you're just meeting all of these weirdos out in the world. So like structure-wise, like I said, it's a first-person shooter. There's like this new crime lord in town. He's called the New Guy. And you're just trying to figure out what his deal is as he's sort of working with some of the big gangs in the city, and you're just trying to bring him down. And so the mission structure is like, you go out on these missions in these semi-biggish kind of like open hubs where like the first one you go through, and this was in the demo, is like, oh, Detroit. So you're like in this kind of like open hub of Detroit. You have all these different routes and go down the streets. And even though you have like a main mission, along the way, if you explore, you'll run into side missions. Like, oh, there's a guy here that's like, hey, I lost, like, I'm a mechanic, and my young student who is a kind of a troublemaker might have gotten mixed up in some carjacking. Can you guys look into that? And so you can chase those little threads. And there's smaller mission threads where you can hand out violations. So like you could see like a car parked at a fire hydrant, and you can choose to put a ticket there or not, and you get experience points for that. And like,
I like that.
You're also collecting basically like illegal material all around the environment. That's like your currency for your XP, is that you'll go into a room and be like, oh, there's drugs here, I'm going to collect these, and then you'll get like plus 25 to your experience, or like incriminating documents or stolen wallets and purses. Like there's so much stolen material all over these levels, and you're just chipping away towards leveling up. And there's also like a choice system where you'll talk to people, and you can basically choose to either be a hard ass cop or maybe a little bit more lenient and I guess human, so to speak. Because like RoboCop's thing is that he has his prime directives that he has to follow, like uphold the law, serve the public. And some of the drama in the films is when he has to deal with a more nuanced situation, that he has to kind of respond more like a human and not like a black and white robot. And so the game presents some of those of like, there's trying to think of one, like there's like one guy, like you meet like a homeless guy, and just like a basic example is like he's drinking, like he's sitting on like his couch and he's just drinking wine. You can go up to him and be like, hey, public drinking is illegal. And he's just like, yeah, man, but I dragged this couch here and I'm homeless, who cares, and whatever. And you can kind of choose to either give him a warning or just be like, nope, rules are rules, here's a ticket, buddy. And like stuff like that. I'm like, oh, and I'm playing this as like, I guess, lenient cop of being like, well, you're homeless, man. Like, I'm not gonna give you a ticket. You're probably not gonna be able to pay it anyway. That just seems you're just drinking, man. And this world sucks anyway. Like, who cares? You're fine. But I do like giving tickets to people. There's some people I've met that I'm just like, nope, screw you. Like, there was one guy who knocked over a homeless guy's shopping cart of his stuff because he was like just being a jerk, basically. But then you confront him and he's like, I was just playing, man. And you're just like, nope, screw you. Shouldn't mess with homeless people. Here's a ticket. The funniest one is that there was a store owner who had these hooligans playing music on their boombox outside the store really loud. And he's like, can you get them to turn it down? And there's like different ways you can handle the situation. I chose to smash their boombox and they like flipped out. They're like, whoa, man, that was a brand new thing. And the best part about these situations is that RoboCop has so many one-liners that are so good because of how dry he delivers them. And they're meant to be like corny, like 80s style one-liners too. Like, it's not like they think it's cool, which I like too, is that the writing feels like they're going for like an 80s sort of dialogue because the game is set in like that 80s vision of the future, basically, right? So like he'll say things like, I caught one guy littering by throwing his rotten fish heads into like the river or something like that because he was too lazy and missed trash collection. And he was like, oh, well, it's not my fault that they, like, somehow he's saying it's the city's fault that he didn't get his trash picked up, even though it's his. And so I gave him a ticket, and then RoboCop said, like, that'll keep you from engaging in fishy business.
Stuff like that. Okay.
Pretty great.
Okay, I get the tone. I see.
He said a lot of things, and they're all fantastic.
Is this like, are we talking about like a Call of Duty style series of levels, or is this like open world or like open area? You're kind of walking around interacting with what sounds like NPCs as opposed to just nothing but enemies, right?
So it's a bit both. Like when you're in like a main mission, it's definitely more Call of Duty where you're in interiors, it's linear corridors are going down, and you're just like mowing through all these idiot gang members. And like the movies, it's very violent where you're like shooting them and their limbs go flying, their heads explode, so where you only see their like the top of their jaw and just a gaping hole. I don't think
sounds like a perfect pair to Jusant.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good.
I don't think the enemy AI is particularly good. There are some instances where they just kind of stand there and shoot at you and don't take cover, or sometimes the game, and I'll maybe get into this a little bit more later, but like the game's buggy. Like there's buggy at worst, or just like not the most polished because of the budget at best. There were times where I killed someone and he still stood there even though he was technically dead. So I'd be hitting him and you're just like, oh, I think he's actually dead. Or I would shoot guys in the head multiple times before they get down, which that didn't happen often, but it happened often enough. But like, you're not even wearing a helmet. Why aren't you just, because usually headshots are like, boom, dead.
It's kind of how they work in video games. Like that's the whole idea.
You shoot a guy in the nuts, you get a trophy for it, which again means that they understood the assignment of RoboCop. So that's pretty great. But yeah, like the inventory, the weapon arsenal isn't super broad from what I've seen. Because I mean, in the movies, RoboCop really doesn't use a ton of weapons. He's got his like, in the game, he's got his thigh gun, which is what I've always called it, which is his main handgun that he stores in his like leg compartment. You got that as your main gun, which has unlimited ammo, which is nice. And that's honestly powerful enough to take down a lot of the fodder enemies. And then after that, you can hold like other weapons like an assault rifle or SMGs, grenade launchers, that kind of stuff. Nothing super crazy. And like the gunplay feels it feels all right. Like it's not bad. Some guns are better than others. I don't think the shotgun feels particularly great, but like the SMG and like the assault rifles have some nice pack a nice punch. What's also nice is that because you're RoboCop, who is basically a moving tank, right? Like in the movies, he doesn't run or jump or anything. He's just like marching through these levels as people are shooting at him, and then nothing hurts him because he's made of metal, and they're all like, oh my God, we can't put him down, like almost Superman-like. And I think the game captures that well in a way that like makes you feel powerful, but not invincible to where it would be boring. Because you can take a good amount of damage just like walking around, because you can't, and it kind of encourages you to, because you can't duck, you can't take cover in the sense that you can hide behind, like you can step behind something, but you're not like taking cover, because they want you to be like, no, you're RoboCop, you can eat a lot of these bullets. So you're just sort of walking down and just mowing people apart as they're trying to shoot at you. And then when you do need the heal, you have like a set number of charges you can hit, kind of auto repair. You're like collecting these like batteries basically, or whatever they are, as your health packs. But you don't need them all that often most of the time. But when you do get in areas where have like heavier gunfire, especially against like more like heavy powered weapons, you do have to play a little bit better, because you're like, okay, this is tearing through me a little bit easier. I need to maybe step behind a pillar more often. So I don't know. For me, it's like it's fun, sort of like living that RoboCop fantasy of like, oh, I can't just march to a room and just annihilate these 10 guys and not have to duck or take cover. And thankfully, the movement feels quick enough. Like you can sprint a bit, but again, RoboCop isn't, he's not running marathons in those movies. So like, I think the movement is perfect, of like just walking is fast enough without feeling too slow or too fast. And then the sprint also hits that, where like you don't feel like, because if it moves too fast, you'd be like, oh, it doesn't feel like RoboCop,
Yeah.
I think the only problems I've had with like fighting is like there was some boss battles that felt a bit much in terms of like, oh, this feels a little too hard. Like there's one particular boss against a familiar enemy that, I mean, it's not, I don't even want to spoil it, but if you know anything about RoboCop, you probably know what I'm talking about, because if you make a RoboCop game, there's really only one big enemy that you have to fight, or that you always have to put in your games. Like you fight that thing.
I know you're teasing here. Yeah.
Yeah. And that fight was a bit of a nightmare in terms of like, because it felt like he was a little too much for how technically limited RoboCop's mobility was, or I was like, I can't really dodge this gunfire in a way that it feels like I need to be able to. Things that help with that is that you can unlock different perks too. Like you have a skill tree. There's like all these different points you can put in, whether it's like getting combat or traversal upgrades. Like I have like a dash that you can use to kind of close the gap or get out of the way pretty quickly, or just even like tech stuff. Like you have an engineering perk where like, oh, I found like, you find like safes around the world, and like you can find a combination, but if your engineering's high enough, you can just break into it and take what's in there. And there's even one for conversations where you can, if you upgrade your conversation stuff enough, you can immediately highlight the favorable responses for things. You can kind of cheese your way through those, because the game has multiple endings apparently based on how the public perceives you, based on your choices of like, oh, he's one of us, he's a man of the people, or he's just the hardline cop that doesn't bend for anyone, and maybe we don't like that. Yeah, it's so far it's fun and like a good sort of like B tier shooter. Like it does everything just good enough to be fun, and then the RoboCop fantasy kind of carries it the rest of the way. And again, there's other sort of like bugs and glitches I've run into that were like, ooh, okay, this needs to be in the oven maybe a little bit more. And even just production wise, like I think the character models look as robotic as RoboCop himself. Everyone kind of has like a dead look in their eyes, or they just look like
more than just the robot man.
Yeah,
it extends to the whole universe. Okay,
the animation isn't super great. The lip syncing is inconsistent. Sometimes people talk and their lips don't move, and I feel like the character models themselves feel limited, where it's like I swear there's two different characters that are the same character model that I've seen. We're like, oh, there's this lady in the police department, and then there's like a side character you meet. It's like, are you the same? I think you're the same person.
That's they're twins.
So
it's a
like
Hot Buzz reference.
I mean, yeah, maybe. That's a great movie, by the way.
One of the best.
So it's like stuff like that shows like, okay, this isn't, don't expect some like AAA super polished thing, but it's also not like a disaster, and it's not like crashing, or anything like that.
I mean, it sounds like you said, like they understood the assignment of what the IP was, and they crafted something interesting about it, because so many other people are just like, hey, he's a robot with a gun, let's make a shooter with that license. And it sounds like they went the additional step, which is cool.
Yeah, like it feels like a good sort of like almost meat and potato shooter of like, it's not the fanciest thing. It's just, it's not like it's got all these super complicated mechanics or features. It does a few good things just well enough to get by, while also preserving the sense of humor that RoboCop has that can lead to some pretty funny moments.
The best RoboCop game ever made?
I mean, probably. I haven't played the majority of them, so I can't say. I mean, it's not a high bar, but I mean, I've been thinking about this as I was playing. I was like, is this like just by default the best RoboCop game?
Could be. I think that was a good
Is
like
that our
Super
headline?
Nintendo game or something.
By default, the best RoboCop game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say it might have the funniest like unintentional comedy moment I've seen this year. Where, and I think I told you guys this in the meeting, but for the listeners, there's a side mission early on, because I should mention too that in between big missions, you go back to the Detroit Police Department and you're sort of exploring around there. It's like a fully explorable hub. You can talk to your fellow cops. Some of them have little, very bespoke little side missions of like, hey, one of our partners is injured. Can you get everyone to sign a get well card? Or I don't know, meet me in the shooting range, see if you can beat my score, like stuff like that. But there's one guy who like works at the like the front desk, basically, who's kind of processing people as they come in to report stuff. And he's like, oh man, there's so much paperwork. RoboCop, can you help me out with this? And so I said yes. And you just take a little side podium next to him and you almost do like a Papers, Please style thing where you're just processing these weird people that come in with their bizarre requests. Like there's one guy that's like, oh, man, I lost my dog, but my neighbors are giving me crap because they say I'm like disturbing the peace, but I'm just trying to call my dog. And you're like, well, what's the deal with your dog? He's like, well, he's got a beautiful red coat. So whenever I go out, he's like, I call him Fire. So like I'm out there in the streets screaming fire, trying to find him. And for some reason, people have a problem with that. And he's just oblivious to why that's an issue. And again, you can choose to be like, hey, I'll let you off for a warning. But like, no, you idiot, you're going to jail.
You're going to jail.
Yeah, you straight up. And also there's a full,
it's truly illegal to, there's like some law, right? Like you can't yell fire in a movie theater and there's no fire. I forget what the term is.
So am I bad that I let him off with a warning?
I mean, he just sounds dumb. So
he sounds dumb. Like he seems completely unaware of what he's actually doing.
We need to change the system from the inside. So
right.
You're doing good, Marcus. Just a warning is fine. You know.
What's also cool is that the police station has a jail that you can visit, so you can see some of the people that you've put in there if you want. But there was one lady who's like, "Oh, I lost my son. He's been missing for like 2 days." And RoboCop initially is like, "Well, a person has to be missing 72 hours before you can file an official report." And you can choose to either stick to that, like again, like hard ass, or throw her a bone and be like, "Okay, I'll look into it." And I chose to look into it. And so he looks into sort of like his database and he goes, "Oh, your son was reported dead 2 hours ago." And he's saying this in the monotone RoboCop thing. And the lady just goes, "Oh no." And then it just goes, objective complete, like done. Like no follow-up. He doesn't comfort her or anything. He's just like, your kid's dead. And she's like, no. And then it's just like, level up.
This sounds like High on Life. A little bit.
But like High on Life tries to be funny,
Okay, it was funny a few times.
A few times. I mean, again, subjective. I don't think that game's super funny overall. But
yeah, to be fair, Marcus was against that game before all the Roiland stuff. Marcus has been hating on High on Life before.
I reviewed High on Life, so
yeah.
And people were not. A lot of people were not.
I'm actually very interested in seeing what that team does without Roiland now, because they're still
honestly,
making games.
I think they're a solid team over there.
They already,
yeah.
But
some DLC and stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, like that dry, dark humor that RoboCop has that fits the sort of the movie. I'm down with that, and they're for the most part nailing it so far. So yeah, I'm enjoying it overall. I'm excited to see how it evolves and sort of sticks the landing.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, Kyle, we're going to go over to you. You've been playing WarioWare Move It, right?
Yeah, WarioWare Move It, which it feels fast to me. I don't know. Maybe the pandemic just threw everyone into a tailspin in terms of the way time works. But
is this like a new WarioWare and not a remake?
This is 100% new.
Yeah. That timeline throws me off then.
Yeah, because let's Get It Together came out in 2021, which I guess is like 2 years ago.
That felt like that was like this year.
I know,
earlier this year.
I felt like it was older because I remember people not being super high on that one.
But I think Ben Reeves reviewed that for us, so I guess it was a while ago.
Like I like to Get It Together. I played the whole thing. I love WarioWare, to be clear. Like I remember playing the Game Boy Advance game when it came out and just feeling like
you were finally seen.
Yeah. But it really felt like truly like this is something unique and new and original. I've never played anything like this. Like in a weird way, right? Because it actually is made up of dozens and dozens of games that you have played before, but it's just so surprising and weird. and cool and engaging and fun. It's one of those games that I just like played over and over and played
Mm-hmm.
every entry that came out since. And yeah, Get It Together was like felt like a clear thing of like, yeah, you know, they're not really quite sure what to do with WarioWare, so they're gonna try something a little different within the franchise, and it's like it's okay. It's the fun of WarioWare is like distinct micro games that all feel different and Get It Together because you actually were like taking a character that existed within every micro game. It led to too much consistency for WarioWare. So it was like okay, right? It was funny. It had a lot of funny stuff. I played it with my kid and we had a good time. But so WarioWare Move It, which I believe is out tomorrow at the time this podcast releases, I think, is, I mean, to sort of just start off sing its high praises is like what I have wanted from WarioWare for a long time. Like this to me is the best WarioWare since Smooth Moves on the Wii.
Oh wow!
I think like WarioWare Gold on 3DS in 2018. It looks like, I'm sorry, I have the list up of all the WarioWare games and stuff. Like I really like that game a lot. Like that is like if you've never played WarioWare, like I'm almost like Gold is like the best. It's like the greatest hits version. Like it has a lot of the old like classics in there remade, and it's really great. And I love WarioWare Gold. And that's like, but WarioWare Move It, like, is like just what I want from WarioWare, which is like just give me new micro games like crazy. Like just be weird and do weird stuff. Like it is the game that when the Switch first launched and they revealed what the Joy-Cons were and how they function and stuff like that, like I'm sure I wasn't alone. I'm sure a lot of people felt like this. My reaction was like, well, bring on WarioWare. What are you guys going to do with WarioWare? You have the HD Rumble, you have the IR sensors, you have the good motion controls, and like 1-2 Switch at launch even felt like, it's like, why didn't we put these resources into having a WarioWare game at launch, you know?
Yeah.
And this Move It feels like the culmination of that. Because what the game is, it's a lot like WarioWare Smooth Moves on the Wii, where it's all like motion based. Like you to play the game, you have both Joy-Cons and you have to stand up in front of the TV. Like this isn't a game you can really cheese. I mean, you can a little bit, like you might be able to sit down and kind of make some progress, but like to have the fun, joyful, bizarre experience that I want from WarioWare, I'm standing up and I'm moving around and I'm really like leaning into everything that it wants you to do. Like the way the game works, which is how, if I remember correctly, how Smooth Moves works, is it like you have a bunch of poses, right? So like one might be you hold the Joy-Cons flat in front of you. One might be you hold them above your head. There's one called like the I forget what it's called, but you hold one Joy-Con in front of your nose and one behind your butt to like pose like a chicken.
Yes,
and like
Kyle was doing the motions for audio listeners, by the way.
Yeah. And the way
funny.
the way the game works is that like every time you get a new sort of position or a pose, it has this funny explanation of like the idea is like the Joy-Cons are these stones. They contextualize everything in a fun way. It's like you must hold the stones before you as if you're presenting a meal to a friend, and it has a lot of good jokes.
Right.
And then
that's what Red Skull told Thanos when he got the Soul Stone.
yeah, that's right. And then the way it works is it'll be like, instead of just throwing micro game at you, what it does is it's like, all right, here's the pose you're going to have to do for this one. Here's the micro game. Here's the pose you're going to do for this one. Here's the micro game. So like you're constantly switching positions. And it's actually the first time in, let me think about it, ever that I have had to attach the Joy-Cons to my wrists with the ropes, because there's so many games that are like, all right, hold the Joy-Cons out in front of you. Here comes a micro game where you're going to have to drop them. And then the game is like, you have to either drop the one in your left hand or drop the one in your right hand to like complete the game. And there's one where you have to like, there was one I was playing this morning where you put the Joy-Cons flat on the ground. I was like sitting crisscross style on the ground with the Joy-Cons in front of me, and then the game was flipping burgers, and I literally pick up the Joy-Con and I like flip it over and flip it, you know, when the burger was cooked and stuff like that.
Oh, awesome.
And it's
you only flipped it once, right? Because that's how you cook burgers.
It was a steak, to be clear.
Okay.
Yeah, and you had to flip it once, and the way that it did it, which I love this contextualization, it's so stupid, is like you flip it and then you flip it and it's done, and then you flip another one, right? You flipped like 3 or 4, And the game knows, it's like, we know that by this point the Joy-Cons are, the ropes are tangled up, right? They're all coiled. So what it does is like, all right, we know that you're super coiled up now, so now lift your arm and let it like spin, and that's gonna like recharge the battery so you can like flip more stakes, you know? And it's just, there's so much fun, stupid stuff. Like, I'm just laughing constantly. Like, I'm having such a good time with it, in the sense of like, it just feels like almost like a weird breath of fresh air, where I'm like, thank God, guys, you just like, you don't have to do the get it together, try and do something a little different with WarioWare. Like, just lean into the absurdity of the micro games and take full advantage of the technology you have in front of you, which is of course the Joy-Cons and having all these bizarre motion control options. So like, I mean, to summarize and to be clear, I haven't even gotten to like the fun like Nintendo stuff yet, where they like, you know, make you do all the motion controls with like old classic Nintendo games. Like, I haven't even unlocked those levels yet. I'm having a great time. Like, it is the most fun I've had with WarioWare in years. Like, I really high praises. Like, another great 2023 game.
No,
like,
not another one.
Yeah, yeah. This one's probably really short
No,
too.
please say it's a 5.
Pretty short.
Stop making good games, people.
And also, unlike Smooth Moves on the Wii, which was like a fantastic like party game that I would constantly like bring people over to be like, let's play WarioWare Smooth Moves. Like, you don't have to like unlock the multiplayer, which was so stupid in that Wii game. You had to beat the game before you could unlock multiplayer, which was so dumb. But this one has like a party mode right from the beginning. Everyone does need individual Joy-Cons, which I was like, which kind of makes sense considering how focused they are on like, the game is you have 2 controllers in your hand and you have to do weird, crazy stuff with them. So because like I went to play with my kid and like, let's play this. Here, I'll give you a Joy-Con, I'll take a Joy-Con. We'll have a great time. And the game was like, no, you got to go find 2 more Joy-Cons. Everyone needs 2 Joy-Cons, which kind of surprised me. But in the context of the game, it's like, oh yeah, no, this makes sense. I don't really know how this would work with everyone just has 1 Joy-Con, unless there might be a party mode where maybe they have micro games designed for single Joy-Con. I'm not sure. But yeah, Brian Shea's reviewing it. I imagine by the time you're listening or watching this, there's probably a review on the site. I haven't talked to him about it at all. Maybe he is not as hot on it as me, but like, truly just one of those moments I'm sure you guys have had with like franchises and stuff where it's like, yes, we're finally back to where I want it to be. And this is like the first great one in a long time. They've been good. I haven't played a WarioWare game in the last since the franchise began that I like hated or thought was terrible.
Yeah.
So Game and Wario I was maybe the coolest on because it's less micro game focused. But yeah, my favorite WarioWare in a long time. Move It. It's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited, and I want to hear what Brian has to say too. I imagine he'll talk about it on the All Things Nintendo.
Yeah, I'll run for Nintendo this year, by the way.
Yeah. Except for was okay.
Well, that DLC
that was last year. The DLC people,
the first part of it, but like, I mean, like Mario, Zelda, that Metroid remaster, Fire Emblem.
Yeah,
they're doing pretty good.
Pikmin, yeah.
Intelligent Systems, by the way. Speaking of Fire Emblem, involved in the WarioWare games for quite some time, and this one's no different. I think they just assist, or maybe they develop it fully. I'm not sure.
Oh, interesting.
But they make the self-serious strategy games over the Fire Emblem side, and then they just dump all their bizarre weirdo ideas.
They did the Advance Wars remake too. Them, right?
1+2 reboot.
I mean, originally they did Advance Wars. They did a remake too.
I'm
that
looking at
came out this year.
Their list, right? I'm looking at their list of games developed, and that's not on there. So maybe they were just their consultant. Like,
okay,
I don't think they actively developed that one, unless I'm misreading something. But
okay,
yeah, WarioWare Move It. Move it to your local retailer to get a copy and have a good time.
Yeah, and maybe get some more Joy-Cons.
Yeah, you might need to get some other Joy-Cons. Or you could do what I did, where it's like I actually had a pair of Joy-Cons that were like plugged in to like a charger that just like live on a charger, but it had gotten loose, so it's like been dead for months, and I had no idea. And so I had to like tell my kid, I was like, I'm sorry, I'm playing this by myself, and you just got to watch me have fun.
Yeah, man, simulating my childhood friendships. Hey man, you can watch me play if you want. Yeah. I'm just like, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're just hanging out. It's fun. No, yeah. She was getting into watching me flip the stakes. She's like, you gotta get that one. You gotta flip that one. What are you doing? I was like, I'm sorry.
Gordon Ramsay mode, I see.
Yeah.
You're right.
Master Chef.
Equally as profane as well. surprisingly.
Okay, well, also I just like looked at, I've been looking at you guys on Discord all call, but I looked at our OBS recording that just has all of us with our hats on, and we just look ridiculous.
It's like we look like cool guys, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're fine. Wait till I release some video footage of WarioWare if you want to see some ridiculousness.
Yeah.
I was thinking I might try to do. I did that Resident Evil video recently, Alex, where I had like the inset camera. Like I'll do that and I'll just film myself, maybe
Perfect.
maybe we can all just commentate on it. It'll be good.
Awesome. Well, I've been playing. People, longtime listeners, and by long time I mean like if you listened last year, might remember me talking about a game called The Finals, which is an upcoming competitive shooter. Very much focused on level destruction. It's being developed by Embark Studios, who are, I think, a subsidiary of Nexon.
This is Patrick Soderlund's studio, formerly of EA, and
that sounds right. Yeah, they're working on Arc Raiders, I think. Yeah,
they delayed Arc Raiders to push this out first.
Yeah, and this game rules. I just want to get out there at the start. I really, really, really like this game. It's progressed a lot since I first played the closed. I don't know if it was in closed alpha or closed beta back when I first played it, but it's been a while. And it's great. I really like it. So it is a team-based, class-based shooter in the vein of old Battlefield in terms of destructibility, but the
shooter? Did you say that?
Yeah.
First-person shooter?
Yeah. First-person shooter.
Multiplayer. I'm looking up a trailer for this because this is one that has really passed me over. I need to take a look at this while you're explaining things.
Yeah. So team-based shooter. The classes in the game are not like assault, support, medic sort of thing. It's heavyweight, middleweight, lightweight, and so the lightweight people are smaller in stature, smaller hitboxes, move faster, but less health than the big boys. But for instance, the map takes advantage of that stuff where like the small little lightweight people can fit into like ventilation shafts and sneak through little holes in the map, whereas the heavyweights can't fit through them. But the heavyweights are interesting because they have an ability that they can smash through walls if they want, like Hulk style. And then there are the middleweight class who like specialize in like throwing jump pads down for their team, or healing beams, and like having assault rifles, whereas the big guys are more like RPG sledgehammers, like very much like vying for space in the map, right? And the whole gameplay loop is it's like a number of 3-person teams. I want to say it's like 3 or 4 3-person teams per map, and you are all fighting over money in the game. And so the round starts, and there are vaults that come into play, and you have to go to these randomized points on the map and fight over the vaults of cash. And then once you unlock the vault, you then have to take it to a cash out spot, which is where like you're depositing.
We should probably preface by saying this game has it's like set in a game show, right?
Yeah,
it's almost like a weird Hunger Games style looking. Like people are watching you, like it's got like an audience and stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like
the trailer reminds me of like, this might be a point of reference that I want to get, but in like My Hero Academia, they have these like big
arenas,
indoor cities that they use to like train like heroes and stuff. It kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like you're in this small vignette of a city, and then on the exterior are like crowds of people cheering you on.
There's like sponsors and stuff.
Yeah, you're in this big Thunderdome sort of thing. And you're all fighting and like blowing up the level. And like when I mean you can blow up the level, you can completely wipe out buildings, and it's so much fun. There's a huge emphasis on movement and team play with like, it's not, you can't really win if you just roll in and like run and gun, because everybody only has like one primary weapon. It's not like you can go on this killing spree and like swap to your pistol while you reload your main gun. It's like everybody has a gun and then a lot of utility. And for fans of Prey, there are glue grenades and glue guns, so you can build like platforms to jump up on to get to different parts of the level. There are grappling hooks, jump pads. There's a one of the classes can deploy zip lines to any point on the map. All of which those things are all destructible. So like you could zip line, get your team up there, and then throw some C4 on the zip line when the other team jumps on it and blow it up, and the zip line will like disappear and like they're falling. And there's a lot of platforming at play as well, and a lot of pitfalls that people can fall into. And it's just it's really fast paced. I've been playing it with Leo Vader quite a lot. And me and Leo have been having a ton of fun. We played the other night with Jacob Geller. And we were each a different weight class, like trying them all out. And yeah, it's kind of like, what's that game mode in Call of Duty? Is it, Headquarters or something? Like there are specific points in the map that everyone are fighting over, and those points kind of change and rotate. But it's a ton of fun. Yeah, it's called The Finals. I'm playing it on Steam. I think it's I don't know if
an
it's
open beta right now.
Yeah, it's an open beta. Let me see when the release date is. I don't know if they've said.
It doesn't have one.
Okay, yeah. I think they're just kind of taking their time on it.
Because it had some like closed beta tests over the last year, and this is the first open beta.
Yeah, or taking their time to say, hey, this game's out, right? Like Fortnite style, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, did Fortnite ever hit? It's now 1.0 at this point, I guess.
It
right?
did, but it took longer than it should have.
Yeah, which is like, yeah, why not, right? I mean, like,
I feel like this game is going to release before the end of the year, but that's a guess.
This year.
That's a guess.
Okay.
Are we taking bets? I don't think it will.
Yeah, I'm thinking 2024.
I think there's been
I think it's going to be an open beta successfully for a while.
Yeah, there's been some
the open beta
that
does have
December.
an end. Like I think November 2nd is the last day for the.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
dang,
if
I
you want to
gotta
get
play
in, you
more.
got to do it this week. Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
I guess it'll end the
day.
day that this comes out, actually. So.
Oh no, open beta till November 5th.
Oh, 5th. Okay.
According to their
way more
Twitter.
time.
Yeah, but like Leo and I are playing tonight. Like he's like, "Hey, you want to play more finals tonight?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." I'm really digging it. I think it is going to be
cool.
the next big multiplayer game. I think it's got a lot of really interesting systems going for it. I think they still need to tweak like damage numbers on weapons, because everybody only has one gun. Sometimes like you put a clip in a guy and it's like, oh, I just need like one more bullet to hit this guy, but now I have to reload and he's just wiping me out, you know? Whereas like if I could switch to a pistol and like have a pistol instead of one of my like really cool utility items, that'd be a cool decision players have to make. But I kind of like that it's doing things differently than you know, current shooters on the market. But yeah, it's called The Finals. I'm really enjoying it. One thing I think they're doing, like, it really bummed me out that they're doing this. Like I'm still gonna play the game, but I just want to vocalize that I don't like this. Is I think they're using some AI voice work, which I just found out about, which is like, come on, y'all, like pay some talent.
Is it good?
I didn't know it was AI until somebody tweeted it out with an interview. So it's I wouldn't say it's great, but like, because I thought it was a bit cheesy I think like the worst part of the game honestly is the game show announcers. Like they're useful in terms of like knowing information for the player, but like it kind of grates on you.
What's the tone? Because when I think game show announcers, there's different.
We've got the retros hitting the stage. Oh man, the Dingleberries are out. Can they get back in?
Like, are they hype? I was like, are they going for like an Alex Trebek, a Bob Barker?
It's like
what are they?
Alex Trebek commentating a video game would be amazing.
It's
like there's different styles of like.
Oh, the dinguses have the cash and are running to the next thing. Let's go. Can the retros get back in track?
It's like an esport commentator style.
Yeah.
It's not like a
and the crowd will start chanting, you know, certain teams' names. That's my least favorite part. I
was thinking like they could do the Hunger Games commentators where they're sort of like shoutcasters, but they have like some personality too, where they're like, like that style.
yeah.
Yeah.
Touch of the Tooch.
Yeah. What?
I thought we would just move right on past that. Stanley Tucci is
okay,
creator in the Hunger Games, and so that's a game that features a touch of the Tooch.
They need AI Stanley Tucci.
They need the touch of the Tooch.
You can't replace Stanley Tucci. Get out of here.
Yeah, I was pretty disappointed to see that, and I get like in prototyping, if you're prototyping something, you need to iterate quickly. But like for your final product, like hire some talent. Like you got the money.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Mark, well, give us your best. Say the Retros, because that's one of the team names. That's why I keep saying the Retros. The Retros are cashing out on A.
My God Almighty, the Retros! They're cashing out on A.
I like
Good
that.
God, they have a family.
But gold.
And do I want to go on the mines, or are they haunted? You sounded like an old prospector.
I was like, what are you talking about?
Stay out of them mines at night.
Listen, those who know what I was going for.
They're haunted with the ghosts of Christmas.
Yeah. This guy's my witness. The Retros are broken in half.
Yeah, I think you should be a DLC pack, Marcus.
I mean, put me with Snoop Dogg. We can be like the dual commentators together. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Well, cool. Well, that's what I've been playing. Do you guys want to get into some listener questions real quick before we wrap up?
Yeah, look, real quick shout out. Oh, you do your real quick, then I'll do my real quick.
My real quick is more show production stuff.
Oh, okay. My real quick is I just want to shout out that I have been playing Super Mario RPG. I can't say too much about it yet. I can talk at a preview capacity about the early part of the game, and I really like what I've played. It really is a fun sort of truly maybe warts and all remake of that original game, and it's a game that it holds up. It's one of those things that's like maybe they're doing more behind the scenes than I realized, but it really feels like the original game with a really fancy coat of paint, and it's just it's so far making me quite happy. And that's all I really wanted to say. We'll have review thoughts in the coming weeks, I'm sure, but I wanted to at least share that I've been playing the beginning of it.
And my one more thing is I've been playing Alan Wake 2. I really like that game. I just started chapter 3. Really digging it. Luckily, I'm not having too many bugs. I know that's kind of been a consistent thread across the board for people. I think I've lucked out a little bit. I am playing on performance mode on PS5. And yeah, having a really good time with it. That game's scary, man. But I think I was in the mood for a survival horror game, and I'm liking where it's going. I'm liking the mystery. The gameplay is fun. I think it's just such a step up in terms of quality for Remedy. And maybe Control was that step up, but I was really impressed. Just looking at that thing, I was like, man, they are really up there. Their bar for quality is up there in terms of visuals, up there with other heavy hitters like The Last of Us and God of War, in my opinion. When you're just looking at that thing, it's wow, they've really come a long way as a studio. In their what's their engine?
Northlight,
yeah.
No, I mean I don't want to get too deep into Alan Wake right here at the end, but yeah, I mean the presentation and visuals of that game, amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. Let's get into listener questions. Before we do that, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you're enjoying the show and you want to support us, go and grab a physical issue of Game Informer. They are $7.99 over at GameStop.com/Game Informer. Scroll down a little bit past our recent reviews and you will see all of the available magazines that you can purchase. You can also go into your local GameStop and grab them there at the front desk typically. Every GameStop I've been into in the last 3 months have had all of our recent issues, which is really cool. So go support us that way. It really does show our parent company our value, and is a great way to consume our really cool features and previews and cover stories, and also supporting us. Be sure to go and follow us on youtube.com/Game Informer for our video reviews, our cover story videos. We've got a documentary
coming soon. That's all I'm gonna say because I think I'm supposed to be stealth dropping that, and I just realized it as I was talking. But I'll give you a little tease in the coming days. Maybe you'll see something up there. Maybe next week. We'll have to see. I don't know. Stay tuned. YouTube.com/Game Informer. Go and follow us on Twitch at twitch.tv/Game Informer. We stream replays at. Are you guys doing 2 p.m. Central still for replay? Yep.
Yeah.
2 p.m. Central. They just started a new replay playing Spider-Man 1, the PS1 version, correct?
Yeah, the 2000 Neversoft game, to be clear, because there are a number of games called just straight Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 2000 Neversoft game. Yeah.
Yeah, y'all just kicked that off last week. If you want to see archives of that stream, you can go to our second YouTube channel, youtube.com/Game Informer Shows. Check that out. Subscribe if you're interested in our stream archives and in episodes of this show. Go up there as well, the video version of the Game Informer Show. Lastly, go and follow the crew here on social media. Follow Marcus at Marcus Stewart 7. Follow Kyle at Kyle M. Hilliard. And you can follow me at It's Van Aken. Go listen to All Things Nintendo, our Nintendo podcast, hosted by Brian Shea. New episodes come out every Friday. I realize I've said lastly like 3 times in this segment, but the last,
it's not really last.
The last final thing, go give a big shout out to our podcast editor, Matt Storm, aka DJ Storm again. They host the Fun and Games podcast and the Reignite podcast, which is a BioWare focused podcast. Go show them some love. They help us out every week. We pay them to edit this show, and they do a great job. So thank you, Matt Storm. All right, listener questions. You can be part of the show and influence what we talk about by emailing us podcast@gameinformer.com with the subject line Game Informer Show question, or by joining our Discord, which you get access to by subscribing to us on Twitch one time and going to the Game Informer Show channel in there and asking your question. We usually do a call for questions there as well every week, and we've got quite a few this week, so let's dive in. Dr. Mono on Discord asks, this year has been amazing for both AAA and indie games. However, I feel like many quality releases are falling under the radar, either because we don't have the time to play them all, or they fail to fulfill their sales potential. So, can too many quality releases be detrimental to the video game industry?
Man, this is a good, tough question, because like, the answer, I suppose, ultimately is no for the industry as a whole, right?
Correct.
Like having a 1,000 great video games over the course of a year is like, that's great for consumers. That's great for the
That's going to
industry.
expand the industry and find new fans than having less games.
But it's sort of on a smaller individual scale, it's kind of undeniable that great games do get swept under the rug, under the wave of just like good stuff. Like there's a lot of good games that I did not spend as much time as I wanted to on this year, or maybe missed entirely. Like there was one that, like by Volcano High, I felt like there was like all this hype for that game and excitement, and then like it was like all of a sudden one week it was like, oh yeah, that came out last week, and I think that was a fault of just a sort of avalanche of good stuff this year. So it's a tough kind of question to answer. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's worse when it's like it's either October or February that does this, where everyone decides to do it all like, you know, their releases that year, and it's usually like, you know, like fiscal driven, like, well, at least October's like, oh, holiday season, like this is the time to put it out if you want to make a good buck. And in February, it's like that's the last chance to sort of like have something on the books for like the new fiscal year. So like it's like almost because everyone's trying to gather around that watering hole, not everyone is going to get a drink from the in terms of people playing the game, because there's just so much around it. So it's like on that like much smaller level, they can it can be a problem because everyone's kind of getting in each other's way sort of bit, and it's only a few are going to rise. But like, I mean, that's the case all the time. It's just it becomes more of an issue when it's like those situations where everyone is trying to hit the same sort of like general target because they kind of have to, you know?
Yeah, I think if you're a smaller developer, like, really maybe consider, this is just like if I'm going to be working on a game, right? I've been working on some prototypes. My plan, if I ever decide to make a commercial product, however small, is to do like visual first development. Like get my visuals and my art style down and my systems, and like get a prototype, and then build the content after that, so I can start marketing my game early and building a community around my game from the jump, to have that base. Because like, have a Discord, have a YouTube channel where you're uploading devlogs, right? Like build that community, because there's just so much competition. And I think if you are able to get a fan base that is interested and with you, I think that's where you see the most success. Like, I think that's where we see on things like Twitter, like, oh, this random game is now super popular. And I think a lot of that is because like their people, like, we're really signal boosting for them, and like we're really going to bat for them. And it kind of spread to the wider part of discourse a little bit. And at least you might get your week in the Steam chart spotlight. That maybe that's enough to like help you make another game, right? But it's tough out there, man. I don't envy the people having to pick and make those publishing decisions.
Yeah, tough.
Mike J. Lunt on Discord asks, last week's pod talked about how this year will have to be considered as one of the best years in gaming in terms of game releases. But I think a more important conversation needs to be had. Is this the worst year the industry has ever had when you take the layoff epidemic into account? I don't know enough of the industry's history to compare it, but the layoffs at Bungie really hit me hard this week as a Destiny player.
I mean, I don't know if you saw, but Paris basically tweeted that exact sentiment yesterday.
Paris
like,
Lily?
Paris from, Kind of Funny Paris.
Gamertag Radio, yeah.
Yeah, Gamertag, saying like, I don't think we can say this is the best year in gaming anymore because of the layoffs. And, he got some pushback from people. It was like a big debate on Twitter, apparently. But I mean, I see where he's coming from, especially from that angle. And like, I mean, it's true. It's such a...
I was just going to say, people with former Game Informer writers who went over to the publishing side are affected by this. Leon Rupert and Jay Grisau, who I didn't work with them personally outside of Jay and doing an internship, but like, it sucks, man. Like, we've all been affected by layoffs, like me directly. Like, it's brutal. And like, it's that thing that it's like the entire world is dealing with right now. Not to like blow this up into a larger conversation, but it's like, this should be happening. Like, everyone is like having like these record profits. Like, industry is like growing. I don't understand why these mergers are happening and leading to so many layoffs, and it's so frustrating. And like, we were just talking because we're like sort of rolling into our year-end discussions. Things are happening and discussing game of the year and that kind of thing. We're gearing up for that. And like, me, Matt, and Brian were like, we have to make sure we pay special attention to like the layoff, because this issue will be a celebration of 2023 games, which the level of quality of the games is just like stellar. But like, we have to also talk about how just it's so unstable and no one can maintain employment, and that's frustrating. And like, it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, it's a wider tech problem too. Like, it's not just games. Yeah, but it's.
I think a lot of these C-suites are using like the idea of a recession. Like, there's been questions: are we heading into a recession? We're for sure dealing with inflation, but that is separate from a recession. I think I'm not an economist. I just have opinions. But I think a lot of these big corporations are kind of like trying to make that more like, well, hey guys, we're in a recession. We have to tighten the belt, and it's all an
not me personally, right? Not me personally, the executive level.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not taking.
You guys need to tighten your belt.
Yeah,
it's like I'm not cutting anyone or taking a reduced.
They're kind of like taking. It's like it's like capitalizing on like the idea of a recession to.
It feels like a scapegoat.
To maximize your profits. When we are totally dealing with inflation. That is totally real. Everyone's been affected by that, but that is different than a recession. And I think, layoffs are not the answer to that, right? It's just a failure of leadership across the board.
And it's worse when like, even if it's like, if it has to happen, to not see the people up top try to mitigate it or take some sort of accountability by either
I'm kind of sick and tired of like
their pay or anything like that. Like, I always think about when like Nintendo when they were in the dark days of the Wii
Iwata.
U, how Iwata
Yeah.
took that like massive pay cut.
50%.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of these people can afford to do that because it's like you make so much and have so much in assets. It's like you may as well like at least show some degree of solidarity of like, hey, it was probably our decisions, or not even probably, it was our decisions that led us to this situation. Like, I think the Epic stuff is the most infuriating example of that. Of like, especially the Bandcamp stuff of like, can Tim Sweeney at least get on and be like, yeah, I'm just gonna like cut my pay because this was all my idea basically.
Also,
and now you guys have to pay for it.
Why is it on the survivors to share resources and to like the executives always just they'll tweet like we're really saddened today by these layoffs. Okay, well, how about you like put some action behind that and like go out of your way to talk about the people who are let go.
Yeah.
Instead of like at least try to do something if you really
it's
can.
like if it's gonna happen, at least. Like
Meanwhile, you see the survivors at the company, signal boosting the hell out of their former coworkers, and the leadership is just silent and we're very sorry. It's like, you did this. Have some accountability at the very least. Yeah, it's just a failure of leadership across the board.
But I do appreciate the question because like obviously like video games are great this year. And it's like an art form that's like worth celebrating, but like we should also acknowledge that on the sort of business industry side of things, it's not going as well.
It's grim.
It's tough.
Yeah, and it makes it hard. Like, I can't imagine anyone that aspires to get into video games what you're thinking if you follow this stuff this year of like, should I? Like, is that a good idea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's again, that has long-term ramifications if new talent are discouraged from entering for pure like economic reasons, basically.
Yeah. Quillgrim on Discord asks, which video game sidekick or character number 2 would come out on top in an all-out last one standing battle royale involving every video game sidekick ever? Jesus. Licensed superheroes, anime characters are excluded.
The battle of the number 2s.
Kazooie.
Tails.
Is Kazooie the number 2?
Yeah, I mean, you control Banjo.
I guess, I guess because she's like the dominant personality.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Kazooie has a pretty good chance. Like, honestly, because like she's stern, man. Like
she's got some fire.
Marcus
would the Pokemon count?
Bolts.
Like, are Pokemon second to the protagonist?
I feel like I feel like you could say the trainer is because nobody cares about the trainer.
Like send in Red.
I don't think it counts because I think they're all equal footing. I'm thinking of the Clanks, the Daxters, the
Clank's a good one. Clank can Clank can transform into a giant robot. I think Clank's up there. Is
it Clank v Kazooie? Is that
what we've all been waiting for?
Bird versus Metal.
Daxter's out immediately, by the way.
Oh, Daxter's
love
useless,
Jack and
man.
Daxter, but he trips and falls walking to the arena and gets disqualified.
I'd probably say same with like Luigi.
Yeah, Luigi. Yeah.
Well, what, are we talking like Mario Rabbids Luigi? He's got the sniper or the bow and arrow.
Keeps his distance.
No, you got to stick with like the brother controller. Original NES.
Yeah,
he's Mario, but just green.
Diddy Kong.
What about
Diddy Kong would do all right.
I love Diddy Kong, man.
Yeah.
What about Ken because he's the number 2 to Ryu in Street Fighter? Ryu is the canonical number 1, and I think Ken's the number 2.
Is Chun-Li number 3?
Because they are best friends, and he is kind of like just a step below Ryu. But Ken would absolutely hold his own against a bunch of people.
Yeah. Well, now we're getting into the semantics of it. It's like, do fighting game characters like they all have the same level of playability?
I mean, narratively.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Ken plays second fiddle.
From. Yeah.
But it's gonna be hard to beat.
I like sticking to 3D platformers, the mascots.
I think Kazooie could talk her way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Clank might be a giant robot, but Kazooie would just say something so cutting to Clank that would just like get to his core, and he would just instantly become depressed. Like, Kazooie is mean. Like, I don't think people remember that about Kazooie, but she's mean.
Yeah, she's kind of a terrible person.
Yeah. Well, she's a bird,
honestly.
not a person.
Like, I don't know how Banjo puts up with her, honestly,
or
why he puts up with it. What does he get out of it? Like,
the ability
I guess
of
he
flight.
can fly.
Yeah.
But when they're just at home, not on an adventure, like what what is the benefit? Who like
Sometimes she carries him, and she walks a lot faster, which
He's
begs
probably-
the question: why aren't you the one that's always walking? But
he's probably doing all the chores, and she's just like yelling at him the whole time, like, "Where's dinner?"
The
Uh,
answer's Kazooie. We did it.
Kazooie, we did it. Yeah.
Disava Canas via Discord asks, what is your favorite slasher or horror movie icon? And which ones would you like to see get a game made? I've been thinking about a Friday the 13th single player game with an original story.
I'll say, I guess he's my favorite because he's the only one that ever genuinely scared me as a kid. But Chucky, there's never been like a Chucky game to my knowledge, right?
So,
And you
like
like
that asymmetrical horror game.
Yeah.
or like it'd be cool because you'd be a little doll, so it'd be like little person in the big world thing. So you kind of like it almost reminds me of, you guys ever play Among the Sleep, that like horror game where you played a baby, like a literal infant?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be like that perspective. Like you're just, everything's huge, but you got to get around, but you have to find ways to like cleverly get on a bookshelf and stab somebody. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Sarge from Toy Soldiers always scared me.
Oh my
kid.
god, Toy
Weird.
Soldiers reference.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that name in a while.
That's
Or you mean Small Soldiers, right?
is that what you mean?
What,
Small
Small
Soldiers,
Yeah.
the movie,
Yeah.
The
Okay.
Gorgonites.
That
Right.
you think that's a slasher movie? Is
No,
Yeah,
but
no-
I was
no
saying
one-
he
no one
scared.
dies.
He scared me as a kid because he's very aggressive.
Okay, I was like,
Not
he's
a
a
traditional horror movie. I don't watch horror movies, so I don't
Yeah.
have a horse in this race. So I'm just.
That's Tommy Lee Jones, right? I think.
I think so.
I
Yeah.
think
Kind of
it.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I need to rewatch that. It's been so long. I used to love that
Gorgonites.
movie as a kid.
That David Cross is in that movie, I think.
Yeah.
He is. Yeah, he is.
J Herb 24 on Discord asks, "What's your favorite candy bar, and why is everyone else wrong?"
Snickers. It's the objectively best candy bar.
I like Snickers. I like Snickers.
But there's
Snickers-
and all that protein in there. Come
It's
on.
like Snickers
Get out
has
of there.
it has everything you could want. It's got chocolate,
Except
peanuts,
for
caramel
peanuts.
nugget. What? You don't like peanuts? Or
Oh, get those out of there.
I like
you
payday.
go for the almond, the fancy almond Snickers? Or
No, if you're gonna do a candy bar, it's gotta be all candy ingredients. Get that.
are you just not a nut guy with
No,
candy?
not really.
Oh, okay.
I like
Really?
paydays. Speaking of nuts, paydays are great.
That's it. What's wrong with you guys? That's all peanuts.
Yeah, I can't get
good,
with you on the
though.
payday train. It's too much nuts.
Oh,
I
it's
like nuts,
salty
but
and
it's a little-
sweet. Oh, it's so
I actually,
good.
payday I would eat a lot in college because it was like cheap, right? It was like the quick, cheap thing that also had like the
I
most
feel like it's the
protein, it was
same.
the most filling, you know?
Oh, okay. Because I feel like it's the same price as every other better candy bar.
It's like well, I could eat a payday and not be hungry for 4 hours, or I could eat a full meal, which I can't afford anyway. Just those healthy college habits you develop.
I like Reese's cups quite a bit. Those are bar. You can smash them into a bar shape.
I mean, they do make a Reese's.
They have the
bar.
fast break
You
or
could
whatever
just-
it's called. I don't
Fast
know.
breaks are good. Fast breaks are underrated.
Yeah. Oh, those have,
Oh,
like,
Kit Kat.
pretzels on
Kit Kat is
them.
my favorite.
Yeah. I like a Twix. I think Twix, 100 grand.
All
lately
great.
I've been into.
Yeah. Twix, Kit Kat, Snickers, all S tier in my opinion.
I mean, to me, Snickers is undisputed number one. All those other ones great, but when I need a candy bar, it's always
my
Snickers,
grandpa,
my go-to.
we'd play golf as a kid, and he would bring frozen Snickers, not the ice cream version.
Oh,
he
cold
would just-
Snickers is great.
He would just freeze the Snickers, yeah, and then
No,
you have an
ice
ice cold Snickers on the golf course.
It seems
It's like,
hard, difficult.
snapping
With
all of his. Yeah,
Well,
when
by
they're
the
too
time-
cold, they can be a bit.
Yeah,
much,
but like
yeah.
you want it like not frozen, but like
you want it fridge cold, like
Chill.
chill.
yeah, chill.
Yeah, you don't want it because
Oh,
then if you're biting into it, you're probably gonna shatter your
Yeah.
old man teeth.
yeah. Last question. Matt Storm, our podcast editor on
Hey.
Discord, asks, "What's a game that's not survival horror that still creeps you the hell out?" Small Soldiers. For me, it's Metroid Fusion for the GBA. Between the music and some of the boss environmental designs, it's spooky as heck.
I never thought of it this way as a kid, but somewhat recently, someone described Mario 64 as being a very lonely game because,
Oh,
the
I
technological
actually-
limitations
The
kind of like,
underwater level in that game
yeah.
would always make me feel sad and also scared because I didn't like being underwater in that game.
I think I never, like I said, it wasn't a game that scared me as a child, except for that haunted mansion level, which I really liked with the crazy piano and stuff. Like I always enjoyed that level. But revisiting it these days, which I do periodically, I really adore that game. Like, I do get that sort of like quiet, lonely feeling from the game, and I think it was a technical limitation at the time. Ultimately, that it just feels that castle does not feel alive. You know, there aren't really any toads running around or
It's a
anything
ghost
like
town.
that. Yeah, so that's I think that's kind of
That's
retroactive.
that's a really good one, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is a famous one, but like in Metal Gear Solid 2, when the kernel starts breaking down and starts giving those weird calls,
Don't spoil it for Alex. Don't spoil it for Alex. We talked.
Okay. All right. Well, wait. Are you?
He's insisting he's going to play them. He lied to my face and said he's going to play them all, but don't spoil it.
I've been trying to get a code so I can play them, but nobody's sitting.
Okay.
I will say, the advice I gave you recently, I said maybe start with 3. Yeah. I think you just hold out for the remake of 3. I think you play 1 and 2, and then play the remake
Delta
when that comes out like next year or whatever.
Oh, interesting. That's I almost hesitate because we still don't know if that game's gonna retain the like Kojima charm at all.
It'll be close.
You know, I mean, we'll see. I'm a little worried about that, but
fair.
But I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, that's not a bad like game plan. Okay, then I guess I'll speak it. I mean, I feel like not even just beyond that.
Quick, Marcus, to be totally clear, 100% agree with you. Just genuinely don't want to detail it too much for anyone.
Yeah, like that part creeped me the hell out as a kid, and like even the stuff like Psychomantis in the first game that scared me as a kid, and like even beyond those big moments, I feel like Metal Gear can get unintentionally like unsettling and like borderline scary. Like I remember moments playing like
there's a vampire in one of them.
Well, he's not scary though. He's a cool vampire.
He's cute.
Metal Gear Solid 5 scared the hell out of me.
I mean, 5, like the beginning in the hospital sequence, like that could be a horror sequence.
And when the ghost dudes show up and start chasing you in the desert.
Yeah. Nothing so scary like a big old flame whale. Or even like 4, like the Beauty and the Beast unit, like there's something unsettling about them especially when they're like screaming and you're like snake and stuff, like freaking out. Like Metal Gear has some like unintentionally horrifying moments sometimes.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, cool. I think that's gonna be the end of the show here. Happy Halloween, happy belated Halloween to all listeners.
I hope everyone got a lot of candy. You're probably still eating it if you did, honestly.
Yeah. I'm just now realizing I live in a new neighborhood that I think has actual kids that trick or treat, and our house is decorated on the outside, but we have no candy to give away.
So you're tricking people. They're like, oh, they're clearly into this. Look
all
at those
tricks.
Decorations.
Yeah, no candy.
Are you gonna get candy?
I might need to go get candy. I don't know.
Oh, if you do, are you gonna be the cool house that gets the full size bars?
Absolutely not. I work in games media. I don't have salary.
Is that what you're gonna tell the kids when you hand them fun size?
Hey, sorry, I work in games. There's a lot of layoffs
the news lately, but happy Halloween, by the way.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for listening, everybody. Go and rate the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And we'll see you next Thursday for another episode. Thanks for listening. Bye.